Hey there, welcome back to High Infidelity, the best channel for cheating stories. Like and subscribe to channel for more spicy stories. Now, let's get into today's story video.
My wife cheated on me, so I waited until she moved on to cheat with her. I was solely dating this lady and we were in a committed relationship. She had entered this relationship with some apprehension. She had informed me that anybody she dates only lasts 3 weeks before she moves on to the next one because the males manage to do something to cause them to part ways within that time frame. Her buddies, who didn't want to get too close to me since they knew I'd be gone soon, confirmed this. She was a divorced mother with a cheery attitude who was easy to get along with. I made it through the first 3 weeks, and her friends warmed up to me. We were with each other every chance we had. Weekends were spent visiting friends at local clubs and gatherings, drinking, dancing, laughing, teasing, obnoxiously making out, and going home to sleep. She had now come to recognize me as a faithful spouse who didn't goof up by chatting to other ladies. After almost 2 years together, she was at a crossroads in her life and needed to make a choice about finding a new career. She'd been out of work for a time, and her property was becoming a major burden. She had talked with a longtime acquaintance who told her that there are lots of employment in her profession in Phoenix as it was a significant move from Buffalo, NY, but she wanted to try something new. She departed on Easter of that year and relocated to Phoenix. Because I loved her, my tender heart vowed I'd be there in November. We never crossed one another's paths and constantly communicated. I went down a few months later to see whether I'd enjoy the new city. We quickly returned to the honeymoon period, and my brief vacation was coming to an end. I met her colleagues and found them to be kind. That they would keep an eye out for her till I returned permanently. By the end of October/beginning of November, I've driven across the nation to live with her and her 2 teenage kids. Everything is fantastic. It's the first time we've ever shared a home. We had to become used to each other's routines. I was a die-hard gamer, and my favorite game was Madden. I played every day, and our month together was a learning experience. I had no idea she was on 2 sorts of medications when I was with her. One to help her stop smoking, Chantix, spelling, and the other an antidepressant. She wasn't taking them as prescribed, so she started self-medicating with booze and smokes. Her budgeting abilities were appalling, as I realized. We lived in a home she chose that was too expensive for her income alone, and that didn't include transportation or food. I'd begged her to accompany me to the grocery store and bring the kids. That was one of the possible arguments we had. Another example was spending money at Starbucks rather than creating it at home. It was not affordable to spend $20 each day at a coffee shop for 3 people, followed by lunch and supper outdoors. We lived in a large home. I was cooking and shopping while also seeking for a new job. We were able to sit on opposite ends of the home without seeing one another because of this house. The main point of contention was a bottle of wine. I had purchased a large bottle to use in the kitchen. I was searching for it furiously. I'm prone to forgetfulness, but I remembered exactly where I'd put it. I asked her whether she had seen it in the sweetest and most loving tone I could muster. She then went to the garbage bin and inquired whether it was what was in there. I freaked out. One of the reasons I freaked out was because I grew up in an alcoholic environment where this sort of behavior was the norm, even when everything was locked up. She also grew up in an alcoholic home where her mother was a horrible influence, which contributed to more than half of the events in her life. This incident between us drove me to shut down. I can't speak when I shut down because it's going to be savage. I need some time to relax. But nobody of us was willing to budge. It took about 2 weeks for us to get on the same page. My birthday was the next month. We were resuming our relationship. We attended to her daughter's function that night. I didn't want to irritate her when all I wanted to do was spend the day dancing and drinking. The kids wanted to go with us by the time the kids' event was completed and we left them off at home. The time was 11 p.m. I'm becoming irritated since I wanted to have my one drink with her before midnight. We arrived in the bar around 11:55 p.m. She began to complain about how weary she was, and so on. We had that drink and a few dances, and then she runs into someone she knows. They talk for an hour without ever mentioning me. When it concluded, I was like, "Who's that?" She went on to say it was the girlfriend of the maintenance guy's son. I inquired as to why she did not introduce me. She said she had not considered it. So we headed home. It was surprised that we didn't have birthday. Instead, I slept with a practical stranger. As the new year approaches, I find myself missing my children. So I took a flight to New York to surprise them. I gave her money to pay the past rent and the current rent due before I left. She was taken aback, but I assured her it had to be done. I sent everyone New Year's wishes from New York, in between time zones and technology. Her kid was supposed to have them, but she didn't and felt cheated. I returned a week after New Year's and the home is freezing. I was being avoided. Hey, there's something wrong was overloading every sense of my existence. Because of year-end audits, she was working late every night. I had supper prepared for her. I sat down at the table with her and asked her how her day had gone. She conversed, but then she claimed she was sleepy and go to bed. I awakened one night when we were asleep. I had a strong feeling of foreboding. The only thing that was lacking was the ominous music. I went downstairs into the kitchen to look for her purse. We've always had an open-door policy, so if you need anything, just let me know, and if it has to be replaced, it'll be replaced. Because she couldn't afford it, she shut off her phones throughout the relocation to Arizona. I gave her an additional phone I had left over from my divorce. I went straight to the phone, like if I was led there. I opened it and went through the paragraphs. After browsing through some random text, I came upon it. You adore me. I adore you as well. Out of shame, I shut the phone door. What in the world did I just read? Perhaps it was a joke. Nope. I then reviewed every text message that came before and after that one text message to get a sense of what was going on. The text came from the maintenance worker with whom she was working. This has been going on since November. I transformed my life to follow her cross-country, and now I'm being confronted with a knife in my back and heart that twists the more it's inserted into me. I had questioned her the next day whether there was anything going on between us. She just said no. We simply need to spend some time apart while living apart. I just shook my head and muttered, okay. I never did anything or said anything. Instead, the next day, I asked her the same question. In the morning, no one was home. Instead, I just looked her in the eyes and said, is there anybody or anything more that needs to be said? We've reached adulthood. I'm a huge kid. Please let me know if you have any questions. She gave me a blank expression and responded, no. Wow, I said as I returned to her. Really? Nothing. She was offered the opportunity to come clean, but she declined once again. You are so full of, I said emphatically. She looked at me, perplexed. I informed her that I had glanced at the phone and read the text and that she had 2 chances to come clean. She eventually answered with a yes, and then explained that it was all because of me. That I didn't have a job, which was true, but I had a few $1,000s saved up, and she didn't have a vehicle, so she drove mine. She didn't have a phone, so she borrowed mine. She couldn't pay her expenses, but I did. I then told her that if I'm that horrible, she should do it with me. I grabbed my vehicle and phone and told her she could drive herself to work, but not in my car, and she could call a cab or a friend, but not with my phone. I posed this query to her. If I'm such a stranger living here, consider those 2 months of rent I gave you before I went for New York paid up to the end of January. I ultimately left in January. I now have my own apartment. I fought, but I maintained my dignity even when she failed to pay bills and the TV and electricity were turned off and I had to live in the dark. My accidental retaliation was that we agreed to discuss over drinks. We ended up nude and inebriated, having despite the fact that she was with this new man. For a long time, I had a lot of grudges towards her. I was very aware of what I was doing. I wanted you to remember what I did every time you looked at your girlfriend. I could also do it whenever I pleased. That was mine before it became yours. But I knew if it came back, I'd throw it away. It's now simply a toy. I know that sounds horrible, but when someone does something that changes someone else's life, it's a major issue. However, if you are treated as if you are anything less than gold, everything related with it, including the person, becomes worthless. I've been single since 2010, and have dated a lot of ladies throughout that time. I've met some wonderful ladies who inspire me to be a better person, but I've also met other women with whom I wish I could rewind time. All of this has taught me to trust my instincts. I've got indicators that some ladies aren't right for me, and I trust my instincts.